Somalia is more than just a country where piracy and conflict flash across news screens. It possesses a wealth of intriguing aspects that defy conventional stereotypes. For example, it boasts Africa's longest coastline, ancient rock art that captivates like vintage comics, and a vibrant poetic culture. On many maps, Somalia appears as a dangerous void, but in reality, there are safe havens where people strive to develop and preserve their history. How does the desert manage to safeguard ancient traditions? Why is it that one of the most homogeneous nations on the continent resides here? And what if I were to tell you that piracy in Somalia is practically a thing of the past? Today, I will unveil 10 facts that will compel you to perceive this country from an entirely different perspective. Somalia is a genuine geographical marvel. It is situated on the eastern coast of Africa. And frankly, you could easily become disoriented by its borders should you wish to. It shares boundaries with Djibouti, Ethiopia, and Kenya. However, its primary asset is the longest coastline on the continent, stretching approximately 3,333 kilometers. You could genuinely get lost on it if you decided to embark on a beach marathon. The climate here is a unique story, arid like a desert, with rains that appear like unexpected guests at a party. Temperatures soar to such heights that your favorite ice cream would melt before it even reached your mouth. Under such conditions, the locals have learned to survive like true resilient champions, preserving their traditions and culture. So, if any of you believe that Somalia is solely about pirate tales, it is time to reconsider your views. Political instability in Somalia is not merely an amusing detail from a history textbook, but a genuine calamity that has plunged the country into a whirlpool of chaos. Here is a clear illustration. The absence of a central government in the early 2000s led to Somalia becoming a haven for pirates. Passing ships transformed into easy prey, and the local seafarers acted as if they were in a movie. But do not assume that everything remains the same today. In recent years, the situation has begun to improve. A federal government has emerged, and miraculously, instances of piracy have begun to decline rapidly. International efforts, including patrolling and collaboration with neighboring countries, have become a genuine lifeline. Therefore, if anyone still regards Somalia solely as a country of pirates and conflicts, they should pause and reflect. There is another side to it, one that is gradually emerging from the depths. Somalia is not an ethnic melting pot, like the majority of African countries, but a genuine village with a single culture. Imagine that 85% of the population consists of Somalis, making the country one of the most ethnically homogeneous on the continent. Yes, you heard correctly. There's no constant struggle for recognition and a place in the sun between dozens of ethnic groups. Instead, we witness a single people with a shared history and language shaping the cultural landscape. This has its advantages and disadvantages. On one hand, you will not encounter language barriers or ethnic conflicts, but on the other, you might easily become bored by the monotony. Naturally, each Somali possesses their own distinctions, but overall, it is like one large family gathering where everyone knows each other and exchanges stories. So, if you wish to converse with the locals, there's no need to learn dozens of languages. Simply learn a few Somali phrases, and you will be welcomed as one of their own. Regarding real life in Somalia, things are not as cheerful as they may initially appear. The country is immersed in humanitarian problems that resemble a scenario from an apocalyptic film. Scarcity of water and food and high unemployment are everyday realities encountered at every turn. And if we add to this the periodic droughts that act as an evil genius exacerbating the plight, it becomes clear that life here is not a bed of roses. People are compelled to abandon their homes in search of a better fate, and internal displacement of the population is commonplace. Access to medical services is also challenging. In some areas, access to healthcare is akin to searching for a needle in a haystack. So if you think that Somalia is simply endless beaches and vibrant markets, hold on to your chairs, because the reality here can be shocking. Despite all these problems, Somalia still harbors a cultural heritage that can be likened to a precious gem at the bottom of the ocean. Oral tradition here is not merely the idle chatter of old men on a bench, but a genuine living history. Poetry and folklore play a vital role in the lives of the locals. For example, legends about Queen Orawilo and giants like Habade and Akamas are passed down from generation to generation, like a cherished treasure. These stories are not only captivating but also serve as a unifying force for the community. By listening to them, one can understand how deeply people value their identity, even when chaos reigns around them. This is not merely cultural diversity, but a matter of survival in a world where everyone is trying to preserve their sense of self. So if you think that Somalia is only about hunger and wars, prepare for a surprise. There is much to be proud of here, even if it is just words spoken in the shadow of poverty. Somalia is not simply a country with sad headlines in the news. The economy here revolves around agriculture, animal husbandry, and fishing, like a helicopter on a single rotor blade. The locals are not sitting idly by, but are actively working the land, growing as strong as cacti in the desert. Yes, in the past, piracy was a genuine scourge. Robbery on the seas, seizure of ships, it was serious. But fortunately, this problem has diminished thanks to international efforts. The piracy situation is gradually improving, and local fishermen can once again engage in their trade without fearing for their lives. So if you believe that Somalia is solely about pirate chronicles, it is time to update your perceptions. There is a real economy here, albeit one with its own problems, that is trying to survive amidst all these complex stories. Admit it, we have all heard of Somalia as a country where danger lurks around every corner, and this is not without reason. But let us be honest, such a myth of total danger is simply an old joke that has become rather tiresome. Yes, the southern regions may shock you with their headlines, but while some speak of chaos, Somaliland and Puntland are calmly working on their self-sufficiency, as if they had their own comedy. These areas are not only trying to create stable conditions, but are also developing their own economies. Somaliland, for example, proudly proclaims its achievements, and if you find yourself there, you will see how people live, work, and even smile. Puntland is not far behind either. Here, fishing and trade are in full swing, and the locals seem to have never even heard of pirates. So, do not let yourself be intimidated by myths. There are many places where you can see real life, not just the red lights of news headlines. Somalia is not simply a territory of fear, but a living country with real people who are not going to give up. When it comes to education in Somalia, there is much to discuss. The predominant religion is Sunni Islam, and this is not merely a backdrop, but an important aspect that permeates people's lives. The country has both secular schools and madrasas, creating an interesting blend of tradition and modernity. Do you know what is striking? Around 40% of students are girls. Yes, you heard correctly. These are not just figures, but a sign that women are beginning to take their place in society and are not going to hide in the shadows. In the madrasas, they not only study religion, but also acquire knowledge that will help them become full members of society. While in other places girls are sometimes hindered, in Somalia there is already a struggle for equality in education. So, if anyone still continues to think that there is only pirate romance and chaos here, it is time to open their eyes. Behind these headlines, there is real work on the education system, and this cannot but please us. Somalia is not only about pirate chronicles and disorder. There is also nature, which, frankly, can be stunning. Imagine the Laas Geel caves, a real find for lovers of history and art. These caves are not simply a dark place with stones, but a repository of rock paintings that are already more than 10,000 years old. They tell about the life of ancient people, their hunting and everyday life. Cool, right? And if you are closer to wildlife, then the savanna of Somalia is no joke. Here you can meet both wild animals and shepherds with their herds, vast expanses where nature plays by its own rules. If you want privacy, this is an ideal place for meditation or reflection on life. But beware, it is better to walk these lands wisely, because nature here is not always friendly. So, if you think that Somalia is just war and poverty, you are very wrong. There is an entire kingdom here, full of life and historical mysteries, which is worth paying attention to. Stereotypes about Somalia are as much a joke as watery films about pirate adventures. Everyone thinks that there are only wars and pirates here, but in reality this is only a small part of the mosaic. Somalia is not just a territory for horror stories from the news, but a country with a rich culture that has its roots in ancient times. Yes, there are problems in some regions here, but in stable places, you can meet people who strive for development and create amazing projects. For example, modern buildings are now being erected in the capital, Mogadishu, and the city is gradually restoring its former glory. You can see how local entrepreneurs, despite all the difficulties, open new businesses and invest money in education. This does not mean that everything is perfect, but in Somalia, there are opportunities that are waiting in the wings. So, if you are ready to see real life behind the scenes of stereotypes, you have a chance to see how this country is changing and growing, despite all the prejudices. Somalia is a real country of contrasts, where against the background of problems you can see rich cultural traditions and stunning natural beauty. The locals are not sitting idly by. They create, develop, and try to break out of the shadow of stereotypes. Mountains, deserts, coasts. There is everything here so you don't get bored. Yes, there are difficulties in life, but this is only one side of the coin. Are you ready to look at Somalia from a different angle? What surprised you or changed your perception of this country? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let the discussion be heated. And if you're enjoying these deep dives into global perspectives, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more captivating stories from around the world.